That's major Ocelot to you.
What is Ocelot up to? What are his goals and motivations throughout Metal Gear Solid? Ocelot is known throughout the series as an agent that can't be trusted and is often double or even triple crossing the people he works with. It can be really confusing to nail down Ocelot's true goals and motivations, though we're going to try in this video. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Luffy and welcome to my channel. I talk video games and character analysis, so if that's your thing, subscribe and stick around. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a channel member so that I can continue to bring these videos to you weekly. Special thanks to Zuigi6087 on YouTube for suggesting this topic. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. First things first, let's take a look at Ocelot's origin. Ocelot's turbulent beginnings.
Do you think love can bloom, even on a battlefield?
Towards the tail end of World War II, an American and a Russian soldier found love on the battlefield and conceived baby Ocelot. Ocelot's mom was a legend known as the Mother of Special Forces and the boss of the legendary Cobra unit. His father was a gifted medium who could commune with the dead, which gave him an advantage on the battlefield. He worked for the boss as one of her Cobras, and over their many missions together, they fell for one another. The boss's pregnancy was filled with challenges. She found out she was pregnant just before she was to undertake a mission to infiltrate Los Alamos and assassinate one of the Manhattan Project scientists, John von Neumann. Neumann was believed to be a Nazi spy, and his death was to prevent the Nazis from obtaining the scientific information needed to build atomic weapons. The boss unfortunately blew her cover and was shot at. The gun was aimed at her gut, though she somehow was able to dodge the bullet and it somehow grazed her brain instead. I choose to believe she was doing a Twin Snakes backflip to dodge the bullet like she was in the Matrix, and that's how the bullet aimed so low could suddenly hit her in the brain. This injury laid the boss out in a coma for 3 months, though she made a full recovery after 6 months. The boss theorized she was only able to make such a full recovery because her body willed it for the sake of her unborn child. The boss felt guilty over this failure, even after it came out that Neumann being a spy was misinformation fed to them by the Soviet Union. She felt that her failure led to the start of the Cold War. The Cold War will come into play later. The boss continued to take missions while pregnant, and on June 6, 1944, the boss and her Cobra unit were tasked with destroying several V-2 rocket installations near Juno Beach. It was during this mission that she needed to have an emergency cesarean section and gave birth to Ocelot. Unfortunately, he was snatched from his mother as soon as he was born by a group known as the Philosophers. The Philosophers were formed after World War I and consisted of the most powerful and wealthiest people from the US, the Soviet Union, and China. The boss was the daughter of one of the Philosophers, though after her father died, the Philosophers started to stray from their initial goal of uniting the world from behind the scenes. What they hoped to accomplish by stealing the boss's son, we'll never know. But regardless, he was stolen. The scar from the boss's C-section snakes all the way up her torso, which is how we know the boss is Ocelot's mom, as it's rumored that his mom gave birth on the battlefield and was left with a gnarly scar after her emergency C-section. Ocelot's real name is Ademska, and his origin begs the question, who named him? Did the boss cry out for Ademska when he was being kidnapped and that's how the Philosophers knew to name him Ademska? Or did the Philosophers name him themselves? The boss calling out to her baby as he's being kidnapped is so sad, but the thought of her not being able to name her own baby is also sad. Which do you think it was? Moving on, we come to the first 2 contradictions when it comes to Ocelot. What happens after he's taken from the boss is told in 2 ways. The first account says that Ocelot worked as an NSA codebreaker until 1960, making him 16, when he and a colleague of his defected to the Soviet Union. The second account says that Ocelot was taken in and raised by Spetsnaz GRU and GRU Colonel Volgan. Personally, I think both could work. Yes, Ocelot working as a codebreaker before he even had his 16th birthday sounds far-fetched, but not so far-fetched when you consider Sunny. The successors to the Philosophers, the Patriots, kidnapped Sunny when she was just a baby, and she was used by the Patriots as a computer programmer. Sunny is rescued when she's just 7 years old, meaning she was working for the Patriots when she was a child. Who's to say Ocelot wasn't in a similar situation? Trained to work for the Philosophers from a young age until he eventually defected to the Soviet Union. At 16, Ocelot was still young enough to be raised by the GRU and Volgan. While working for the GRU and Volgan, Ocelot operated as a spy for the KGB and the CIA. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Ocelot was able to escape the Philosophers, if that had been the goal of his defection, because both the CIA and KGB were proxy organizations of the American and Russian branches of the Philosophers. Or Maybe the philosophers had purposefully led Ocelot to defect so that they had an agent inside GRU. Ocelot's stellar lineage spoke for him while he worked with Vulcan, and he was promoted readily through the ranks until he was a major commanding his own Ocelot unit. Ocelot's beginning is a rocky one. He's stolen from his mom and is potentially made to work for his kidnappers and the world's shadow organization, the Philosophers. He moves on to be a double agent for the proxy organizations the Philosophers run, and that's only within the first 16 years of his life. Things definitely get more complicated from here. Ocelot's not-so-virtuous mission. The Cold War brought 1964 simmering in with tensions between the US and the Soviet Union bubbling just below the surface. The Soviet Union had something called the Philosopher's Legacy, a microfilm that contained $100 billion, and the US knew they needed to get their hands on it. The plan was to send in their most trusted agent, the boss, a soldier who had proven her ability to get the job done through invaluable sacrifice, such as when she agreed to expose herself to unknown dangers by being the first person in space to test the effects of space on the human body. The boss would infiltrate GRU Colonel Volgan's ranks and earn his trust by kidnapping and handing over weapon scientist Sokolov to him, along with a portable nuke launcher and a nuke to go with it. Volgan knew where the Philosopher's Legacy was being held, and the boss had to get her hands on that legacy, no matter the sacrifice. Ocelot was a double agent working for both the KGB and the CIA, while also working with Volgan as Major Ocelot of the Ocelot unit. Knowing Ocelot's status as a double agent for the CIA, it's easy to see how he was meant to support Naked Snake throughout Metal Gear Solid 3. During the Virtuous mission, Snake was tasked with rescuing Sokolov and bringing him back to the States to be reunited with his family. When Snake is sneaking Sokolov out of where he's being held, however, they're confronted by a group of KGB soldiers, ready to fire on Snake. Ocelot interrupts the standoff though, and takes care of the KGB soldiers with some fancy gunplay.
I can't say it feels good to kill a comrade, even if it is for the GRU.
Ocelot says he doesn't like killing his comrades, but he kills them with such flair and with a smirk on his face, which should have keyed us into the fact that he wasn't being entirely honest. Not much is officially said about Ocelot's role in the Virtuous mission, but we can infer that he's here to support the CIA's overall mission to sneak the boss into Volgan's ranks. When attacking Snake, Ocelot messes up the fancy shooting he's going for and jams his gun, making it inoperable and giving Snake the chance to non-lethally take out his entire unit and himself as well. It's revealed at the end of Metal Gear Solid 3 that the bullet he jammed was a blank, meaning that even if his gun hadn't jammed, he still wouldn't have shot Snake. Why would Ocelot be carrying blanks when confronting Snake? Why did he purposefully jam his gun to make it inoperable? Ocelot just proved to us what fancy shooting he could pull off just moments before, so it's hard to believe that his gun jamming is an accident, especially when the bullet is a blank. What's more believable? Ocelot accidentally jams his gun, or he misses when firing at Snake at point-blank range? In the Virtuous mission, Ocelot is meant to make the boss handing Sokolov over to Volgan more believable. Ocelot tries to get his hands on Sokolov, but fails to best Snake, putting Snake up on a pedestal. Sokolov is almost recovered by the CIA, and it isn't until the boss swoops in that Sokolov is successfully kidnapped and lifted by bees into a GRU helicopter for Volgan. The boss has to step in and confront her disciple, Snake. By besting such a skilled operative and rejecting someone she cares so dearly for, she solidifies her position in Volgan's ranks, and her defection is believable. So Ocelot's role within the Virtuous mission is to make the boss's defection believable. He ends KGB soldiers guarding Sokolov and then is defeated by her disciple, Snake, to set the stage for the boss to swoop in to get what Volgan wants, Sokolov, and believably defect to Volgan's unit. Everything seems to be going according to plan as Volgan accepts the boss into his unit, but then Volgan gets excited to try out his new nuke. Ocelot tries to convince Volgan not to fire it, telling him, even if they are our enemies, they're still our countrymen. Sadly, Volgan is unconvinced and fires his new nuke at a Soviet research facility, destroying it, and the countless lives of the researchers working at that facility. Volgan's rash decision doesn't just affect the people who were caught in the blast, however. Because he fired an American-made nuke at a Soviet research facility, tensions between the US and the Soviet Union start to boil over. The US denied any responsibility and shifted the blame to the boss, explaining that they had no control over her now that she defected, and that she was the one who supplied Volgan with the nuke with no clearance from the US.
I can only offer you my deepest condolences over this terrible tragedy.
The Soviet Union is unimpressed with the US's excuses and demanded that they prove their innocence by assassinating Volgan and the boss. With their back against the wall, the US agreed to the Soviet Union's terms. Both countries wanted to avoid a nuclear confrontation. What does this have to do with Ocelot? This confrontation set the stage for Operation Snake Eater, where Ocelot would secretly support Snake as he fought to clear the US's name and steal the Philosopher's legacy. We'll have to save Operation Snake Eater for another video, however, as we're running out of time for now. Your thoughts? Something that I've seen debated online is whether or not Ocelot or the boss knew they were mother and son. We took a poll here on YouTube asking if you thought they knew about one another, and the majority of you voted that the boss knew and Ocelot didn't, which I'm leaning towards myself. The boss is so in the know and so smart, it's hard to think she wouldn't realize that Ocelot was her son. Though I do think this is the one thing Ocelot didn't know about, at least in MGS3. Chronic Snake 82 commented, "Boss gives him a slap only a mother could give. If he didn't know before, he did when his ears stopped ringing." Which made me laugh. She really does give him a slap only a mother can give. Jack Snake commented, "I don't think they knew. There's nothing to prove that either of them had a clue about that. On the other hand, the Sorrow probably knew, but Snake was the only one able to see him though." I hadn't thought about the Sorrow possibly knowing. The Sorrow definitely had a greater insight into things as he could communicate with the dead and haunt/eavesdrop on the living, so I can see him knowing. No wonder he's always crying in MGS3. How hard would it be to see your love and your son interact with no way of reuniting with them or letting them know their relationship to one another? Angle of Dazed 1050 added, "Ocelot was pretty ferocious when he attacked Snake in the wig. Makes you think he probably knew." And I hadn't considered how Ocelot would have felt knowing Snake ended his mom. I wonder if things went down as intended as he did know, or if he didn't know, how that end fight would have changed had he known. What do you think? Did Ocelot and the boss know they were mother and son? Let me know in the comments. Ocelot is the trickiest person in Metal Gear Solid to understand. Right when you think you've got him pinned down, he pops up with a phone call after the credits to remind you that you had no idea what his true motivations were, or what his true goals were. I hope this video helps start to unravel the mystery that is Ocelot. Thank you so much for making it to the end of today's video. If you liked it, share it with someone who wants to know more about Metal Gear Solid lore. If you need more MGS content, check out my Patreon or become a channel member. I upload articles I write on upcoming videos or just thought pieces on MGS in general. Or join us in Discord, we're always talking about MGS. More importantly than that though, please take care of yourself and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Thank you. Special thank you to our $10 Patreon, Nader Najat. Thank you so much for your support.